Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking about some big Bears moves that were made, the start of spring training, and all kinds of more Chicago sports hullabaloo. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. And, you know, if you're lucky, you might even get to see a goalie fight. So, don't sleep on the Rockford Ice Hogs. Less than 90 minutes from the city limits. Fun for the whole family. Head on over to icehogs.com. Get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how have you been?
I have been just fine.
It is good to have baseball back.
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, I can't watch it for multiple reasons at the time being, but it's good to get the notifications on the phone. It's good to see a lot of content being tweeted out by like the Cubs Twitter and seeing footage of Wilson Contreras hitting bombs, and you got RBI singles by Chris Bryant and a bunch of other fun stuff.
Yeah, it's I haven't seen any action yet other than highlights. I've been working. I have the Marquee Network apparently. I haven't found it yet. But
Do you have DirecTV?
I have Uverse.
Oh, okay. I know it's like for DirecTV customers, I heard it was like somewhere in the 600s.
Yeah, I haven't tried looking yet, but I believe it was supposed to have started last week. So I haven't found it yet, but I got to find that. So you still don't have it yet because you're a Comcast subscriber, right?
Right. I'm Xfinity. I don't have it. The network launched yesterday. It sounds like they had some pretty cool programming. Like they had an Ernie Banks documentary. I think they had like a list of famous Cubs games, fun little thing. And then they had the game itself. So it sounds like it got off to a good start for the viewers who could watch it.
Yeah, but I believe Comcast has the largest market share as far as cable providers in the Chicagoland area. So
yes, they do.
That's a bummer for a lot of people.
Yes, it is, including myself.
Have they offered the Marquee Network as an a la carte, like a streaming thing, or is it only through your cable provider?
I think it's through cable because if you get the Hulu Plus that it goes through, you know how they made that whole deal last week. You can't just have regular old Hulu. You have to have the Plus, and apparently you can't even watch the spring games with it.
Bogus.
Yeah, no kidding.
So should we start with baseball?
Yeah, why not?
All right. So the Cubs have a couple of games under their belt so far, and Ian Happ's doing some nice things. Wilson Contreras is doing some nice things. But I mean, it doesn't really matter because it's
spring training.
First week of spring training. I mean, if you look at their pitching line, Chatwood started. He threw one inning, and then it was a bunch of guys that won't be on the team probably pitching the rest of the game. So it's very early spring training. Nothing you can really take away from anything at this point.
No, I think when you look at the first few games, really what you're trying to do is get back in the swing of things. You're just trying to get normal again, so to speak. You're not looking to put up stats. You're not looking to put up big shows. You're really just trying to get back in the swing of things, at least for the big bats like Bryant, Rizzo, Contreras, Baez. It's really the fringe guys that are going to be playing pretty hard because they're going to be trying to make the team, obviously. And I think one of the biggest things to take away as you go through spring training is who's healthy and who's not.
I think so far the biggest thing to take away is Robel Garcia is batting 1,000.
Woo woo!
With a 2,000 OPS.
See, he's going to be the starting second baseman, right? Who needs Jason Kipnis?
Not I. When you have Robel Garcia.
So now that we're talking about Cubs spring training, I made a list of the 5 things to watch for spring training for Fansided, and I figured we could discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, so the first thing I mentioned was Chris Bryant, and we talked about this last week, or maybe we didn't. I don't know. I can't remember. Did we talk about Chris Bryant leading off last week? I can't remember exactly when it was announced.
No, we did not.
Well, Chris Bryant is going to be leading off, and I think... Oh, that's right. I talked about it on my other podcast. Anyway, the decision was made pretty quickly, and I did a poll on Twitter for the Climbing the Ivy show to see what the overall opinion was on this move, and like 88% of the fan base was all for it, and then another big chunk was saying, I'm willing to try it, and a very, very little bit. I mean, again, this is a small sample size. We're just going off what the votes were here. Said they weren't for it. So the news of Bryant being the leadoff man was a very positive one among the fans. I think they not only do they like the idea of a guy with a high OBP and a very, very good base runner leading off because he's a very smart base runner. He doesn't get nearly enough credit for it. But I think people like the whole solidified, here it is answer. I think people were tired of the Joe Madden, well, we could do Kyle Schwarber. Maybe some days we'll do even Hap. Maybe we'll even try David Bodie or Albert Almora. No, this is just Chris Bryant's the leadoff man. There it is. I think that's refreshing to some people.
And I'm going to go in the category with I'm willing to try it. Typically, I don't like to have guys that have 40 home run power leading off. But he is their best, OPS guy, I guess, on base percentage guy too. And and you bring up a good point about being a good base runner. Those are important. You get on base, don't make an out on the base path, because that was a problem last year too, is too many outs on the base path.
Big time.
So you got to get a guy that's smart on the base path, who gets on base a lot, and it gives him the most at-bats possible.
Right, and that's the thing. He'll be leading off once a game, essentially. I mean, obviously, he could be leading off an inning further in the game, but he'll still have chances to drive in guys, to hit home runs. And when you think about it, if Chris Bryant gets on base and he runs the bases very well, you're setting the table for a guy like Anthony Rizzo, who, again, has been called the greatest leadoff man of all time because of what he's done in the leadoff spot and his time there. But when you think about it, I think it's good that you have a guy like Rizzo in an RBI spot where putting the ball in play is key, because if you look at the Cubs lineup, you see a lot of power, you see some good on-base percentage, but you see a lot of swing and miss guys. Rizzo's one of the few guys where you can depend on him making contact with the ball. If you have RBI situations, and this is something the Cubs struggled with, I'd like to have the guy who can make contact in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, here, how does this batting order sound to you? Bryant leadoff, Rizzo second, Baez third, Hayward fourth, Contreras fifth. That's what they'd had against Oakland.
I'd flip-flop Contreras and Hayward.
I would too. And I'm I might.
I kind of like Baez second and Rizzo third.
I was gonna. That's what I was about to say. It's nice. It would be nice to have him sandwiched in between Bryant and Rizzo. But I'm okay. There's, I think it puts Hayward down a little bit in the order, not too far down. And if you can get some good results, like you did early in the season with him last year, I think that could work out. Because I think a lot of the problem, I mean, there was lots of problems, but leadoff hitter was such an issue with the Cubs the last few seasons. And I know nobody wants to say it is, but you had a bunch of big bopper RBI guys coming up and empty bases.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at what Kyle Schwarber did last year. He was better when he was down a little bit in the order, because I think we really just got to end the whole Schwarber leading off thing. So I think you're adjusting this lineup really to the strengths of more guys, just as a whole.
And I like the idea better of, Bryant's going to get his home runs, but if we can have him up there trying to make contact, trying to get on base, I think you're going to get a better Chris Bryant than Chris Bryant going up there and trying to park one every at-bat.
Yeah, I think you might be able to see Chris Bryant not only adjust like with his eye, because he's got a very good eye at the plate, and while his strikeout numbers are technically below like the alarming rate, he still has more holes in his swing than, say, a guy like Rizzo. So I think if he adjusts his approach, not only can he, shorten up a little bit, but it would also allow him to, in my opinion, use a bit more of the field. Because, when he tries to hit home runs, he's very pull heavy. So I think if he sprays the ball around a little more, that'll only benefit him even more. If he's making solid contact and good enough contact, that is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an actually okay approach. I mean, it's probably, if I'm looking at the options there, it's probably my second favorite option is Chris Bryant leading off, with my first being have a time machine and bring 1987 Ricky Henderson to be the leadoff hitter. But they didn't do that one for some reason, so I guess I'm fine with Chris Bryant there.
Yeah, and also look at it this way. Baseball's changed. The Ricky Henderson type leadoff man is kind of died off. You look at the other successful teams around baseball, they're putting a lot of their big boppers at leadoff. It's just kind of the way it's shifting.
Ricky Henderson could park one if he needed to. Just saying.
Oh, yeah, I'm not disagreeing about Ricky Henderson. I'm just talking about, other guys, kind of like the Kenny Lofton type guys. You know what I mean?
Right.
Though Kenny Lofton, I loved him in his time as a Cub. Don't get me wrong. It's just things are changing a little bit.
Yeah, I'm looking at Ricky Henderson. Some of his he's a career over 400 on base percentage.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I mean, there's some years 420, 408, 423, 439.
Led the league that year.
That's walk rate almost 20%, over 20%.
He was playing in 2003? I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah. At the end of his career, he was just on all the different teams. It was Mets and Red Sox and Dodgers and
Padres, Boston, Seattle. Jeez. Because when I think of Ricky Henderson, I just think of him as an A.
No,
I know he was.
I remember the Yankees. I remember the A's just because I had those baseball cards. Mm-hmm. I remember the Mets because I had a baseball card with him as a Met. But I don't remember Padres, Red Sox, and Dodgers.
Yeah, he wasn't there very long. I just wanted to bring up something about OBP really quick. Barry Bonds in 2004, he had a 609 OBP.
asterisk.
I mean,
His OBP was 609 asterisk.
oh boy.
Yeah, there was so much going on with Bonds. I mean, you know, he's definitely a good baseball player, but clearly juicing. And
Oh yeah.
and then they let him wear the body armor so he could lean into pitches. So it was like you couldn't throw inside because you would hit him and then he'd get on. And you couldn't throw over the plate because he would hit a home run. So it was like, what the hell do you do?
And the thing is also, you couldn't try to get him to chase because he wouldn't. He would not chase. He had an eye.
Yeah, he had a good eye, but he didn't need to chase because you were going to have to throw it over the plate. And he took away half the plate with his body armor. And like that was one of my biggest. I mean, I knew he was on steroids then, but I think the thing I screamed about the most is that he had that giant elbow guard, and you know they let him. I mean, Anthony Rizzo leans into some pitches, but nothing like Barry Bonds did. It was disgusting.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. 232 walks in 2004. He didn't even play 150 games.
Barry Bonds. But he had the head like a, you know, his baseball hat went up like 6 sizes. Your head's not supposed to get bigger.
Oh man.
So we've got I guess one of the. Oh yeah, sorry. You made point number 1 on your list, right?
Yeah, and I'll go through some of these quickly. Point number 2 is who's going to get that 5th spot. It's going to be between Tyler Chatwood, Adbert Alzolay, and Alec Mills. Right now, it's Tyler Chatwood's to lose. I think Alec Mills and Adbert Alzolay are very intriguing. They're making the first 3 starts of spring training. No surprise there. So that's just one thing to look out for. I honestly, if I'm a betting man right now, I think Tyler Chatwood gets that 5th spot. But I think if Alzolay really shines, then maybe he could get a shot.
I mean, honestly, if you're the Cubs, you probably really hope that Tyler Chatwood wins the spot, not just the others lose it, but him actually go out there and take it and win, because while he's making a lot of money this year, if he does well, you could flip him at the deadline.
Right.
And get something for him, because he'd be it would be a rental. He's not that expensive, for a second half of a season, and it's a starting pitcher for a team that's either got an injury or is making a run late. So I think that would be great for the Cubs to be able to sell him at the deadline. But in order to do so, you need one of the other 2 guys to be able to step up and take reins of that spot, if they were to trade Tyler Chatwood.
Right. And he's going to have to really play well.
He's going to have to play really well. And I think he's capable of it. I mean, do I think he's going to be great? No, but I think we're going to see solid pitching from him.
I mean, he was pretty solid last year as a whole, especially out of the bullpen.
Yeah, I think we're going to see good things from him. So I think the Cubs, I don't know if they're banking on it. I don't think that's the right way to frame it, but I think
they're trying to make it work.
I think that's the hope. They put that in the, best case scenario situation is they're able to flip him at the deadline and get something for him.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll see how that turns out. Number 3, I think this is really important, and I don't think it gets talked about enough because it should. We need Craig Kimbrell to return to form. And now's the time to see if he can stay healthy, if his velocity is still good, and the stuff is still good. Because one of the biggest factors for this pitching staff going forward is having your closer at full speed.
Absolutely. That's huge. And I think we talked about at the end of last season or maybe during the offseason how we're hoping having the offseason to kind of get healthy and then go through a whole training camp helps return him to form. Do I expect him to be, all-star closer? No, but we need him to be solid enough.
He needs to be effective. He needs to be good.
He needs to be better than effective. Doesn't have to be great, but he needs to be good.
Yeah, good is probably the best where you have to say it, because if you get, let's say, like a 2.80 ERA from Craig Kimbrell and he converts most of his saves, yeah, that's probably what we're looking for. I'm not sure we're going to see the sub-2 ERA Craig Kimbrell again, but boy, oh boy, you don't want to see last year, because last year you saw the velocity go up and down like a roller coaster. He got injured on multiple occasions, and the command wasn't always there.
Right.
So that's important, and I don't think there's much more diving you can go into. You need your closer to be good, because we saw how many games we lost last year because of the bullpen. So, long story short, that's a big thing. Next is what I think is going to be kind of interesting is the final spots on the roster for the position players. There's going to be some competition. Unfortunately, the competition itself isn't really exciting. But, you're going to have guys like Jason Kipnis, Steven Souza, Daniel Descalso, Hernan Perez, Josh Fegley, and Carlos Asuaje. I know, that's not exciting at all. But, some of these guys are going to make the roster and some won't. You could probably guess who. My curious question right now is, will it come down to between like a Daniel Descalso and Hernan Perez? Neither guy can really hit, but Hernan Perez, probably a worse hitter than Daniel Descalso, but he's a really good glove and he's very versatile. But if Daniel Descalso is showing that he can hit better again and you want as much pop off your bench as you can get, then you might go in the direction of Daniel Descalso. Plus, he's also under contract while Hernan Perez is an invite to spring training. You look at guys like Josh Fegley and Carlos Asuaje, those are probably going to be minor league guys you call up for emergency, especially a guy like Fegley. Like, if Wilson Contreras gets injured or Caratini gets injured, I think it's pretty fair to assume, unless there's injury, that Souza and Kipnis will make the roster. I think the Cubs plan to use Kipnis as long as they can and hope to get what they can out of him.
I think the job is going to be platooning until Nico Horner's ready at second base between Bodie, and I think you're going to see a lot of at bats against righties to Kipnis as long as he looks like he can play. If he looks like hot garbage, obviously the plan goes out the window. But I think you're going to see a lot of Bodie until they feel Nico Horner's ready.
And that's point number 5 is Nico Horner. I think a lot of people keep their eye on him. The Cubs are certainly going to keep their eye on him. If I'm a betting man, I think he starts in AAA. He hasn't played in AAA yet. He was called up last year on emergency basis. You saw the promise, no doubt. But you also saw the areas where improvement needed to be made. Because, he's a 22-year-old kid. There's going to be growing pains. There's going to be holes that are going to need to be fixed. And if he needs to take some time in the minors to work them out to start the season, I'm all for it. If Kipnis looks good enough and you have David Bodie, let them be the veteran platoon.
So what opening day, assuming no injuries, and what's your opening day roster look like? Your starters on opening day.
So, if we're just going to talk to start, I'll start with position players. You got Rizzo at first. Second, I think you put Kipnis at second. He's, the veteran guy with the most experience. Short Baez, Bryant at third. And then in the outfield, probably depends on the matchup, but if you're putting your number one guys out there from left to right, I think you go Schwarber, Happ, Hayward.
I think so. I Almora probably makes this team, but I think they limit his at bats.
I think he'll be more of a late defensive guy, unless I didn't have this on the list, but this is something else to watch out for. You know, he says he's retooled his swing, reworked his swing, so now's the time for them to kind of see if that's materialized into anything. Either way, he's not going to be the everyday center fielder. I truly believe they're higher on Ian Happ, and I think they should be higher on Ian Happ. I think Ian Happ has more to offer offensively. But you know, Almora is going to be playing for playing time, essentially. If he doesn't show much of the bat and they still have him on the roster, I really just see him as a defensive type guy.
Ian Happ is a tough one to quantify. I think he has a fairly high ceiling.
I do too.
We saw when he first came up what he's capable of doing. Does he have... Is it the work ethic? I don't think it's the work ethic. I don't know what it is to describe it, but does he have the ability to put it together to be that guy every day?
It's tough, yeah.
We've talked about it before, is when you get to that level, most guys can have a really good day. But the good players and the great players are able to minimize bad days and maximize good days, because it's a long season. You're going to have a bad day. I mean, even Sammy Sosa, in those years he was hitting all the home runs, there was days that he would go 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd go another day where he'd go 4 for 5 with 3 home runs.
Right.
It's the best players are going to maximize those good days and try to minimize, mostly minimize those bad days. And Ian Happ has the ability to have those really good days. It's can he raise the floor of his bad days and minimize those and be more consistent? And I don't know if he can. And I'm hopeful, obviously. I just don't know if he has it in him, because we've seen him be just so wildly inconsistent from day to day. And I think that's what was frustrating to Joe and Jed and Theo.
It is, because when you look at Ian Happ's stats, the holes in the strengths just pop out at you right away. You see that he strikes out a lot. You see that he can struggle to make contact, but you also see how he can mash the ball and take walks. Like, he is not a guy that will swing and miss because it's out of the zone. He will swing and miss at pitches in the zone when his swing gets too long. But when he does make contact, he crushes it. And when the pitch is outside the zone, he doesn't chase it. You see it right there in the stats. I don't know, like you said, because you see the potential, you see the flashes. I mean, you saw the OPS that he has. This is probably going to be make or break for Ian Happ this year.
I mean, it's probably going to go a long way. And another thing on his side is he's really fast. He's a really fast guy. And it's nice to have a guy with speed be able to, obviously for defense, but on the base path, to have somebody that is fast. It's nice. It's a weapon. You need him to be on base more often. And you're right that this is going to go a long way in what happens to him as a Cub. And I'm hoping that he understands the gravity of where he's at in his career, and the potential to make a lot of money and hang with a team for a long time and win championships. Those are all potentials for him. It's can he realize this? There's another guy that we had last year who is still currently a free agent, I believe, Addison Russell, who had all the tools and had all this promise and squandered it all away. I mean, his was a different situation, but if you just look at the on the field portion of it, he showed flashes of greatness and
Right.
then just fizzled out and never, you saw his defense even take a dive. And
Huge dive.
so it's, you know, just because you have talent doesn't mean baseball's a hard sport. Just because you have talent doesn't mean you can have it just translate to being on the field every day playing well.
Right. Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. So those are my 5 things to watch. There are certainly other things, but those are the ones that really stand out to me.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that list is health of the starting pitchers.
Sure. Yeah.
You've got some older arms on there, and you don't have a ton of depth, so you need these guys to stay healthy and to play well. So, everybody's clearly watching for the health of their starters, but the Cubs, I think, are in a precarious spot because of just the age of John Lester, and the lack of, I think, you've got some Alec Mills and Azalea. You've got our younger guys, but are they ready to step up at this point? If you're a competitor, probably not. So you need, if you're going to be competitive, I think that you need the health of those guys going forward.
No question. And, luckily throughout the careers of Lester, Quintana, and for the most part, Hendricks, he's had a few injuries here or there, but they've mostly been durable. But as you get older, it's always hard for people like that who have a lot of innings under their belt to keep up that durability. So, yeah, that is definitely something to watch.
One more Cub thing that's kind of a bummer is Brandon Morrow already showing some discomfort and tightness, and that's just like a bad sign off the bat.
Yeah, I don't think we can rely on Morrow being a part of this team going forward.
I wasn't expecting him to be, a contributor going forward. I was just hoping that he could put together a healthy season and use that to springboard off of for whatever else he did in his career. But right off the bat, it's they've shut him down for, quote, at least a few days, and his timetable return is uncertain. So that's a bad sign.
Yeah, it's not a good one, and it's just too bad for him. It's like setback after setback after setback. You think maybe eventually he just decides to say, well, I had a long career. It's time to hang it up. I don't know. I mean, I give him a lot of credit for sticking with his thing, A lot of guys could have easily given up, and he didn't.
Yeah, it just, he's stuck with on a minor league deal. But he's 35. And how much does he have left in the tank?
Yeah, I don't know if there is much.
And
it's a shame because he was really good when he did pitch.
Yeah, and I never played competitive sports at any sort of high level, but as a human being, it's hard to imagine at the end of your career when it's probably already difficult to maintain at the same level as people a decade younger than you, and then have to keep rehabbing from serious injury after serious injury. Like, what sort of mental toll does that take on you? I mean, we look at a guy like Andrew Luck, who just mentally just had a hard time recovering from these injuries and walked away at a young age. This is a guy that's at the end of his career, and he's still trying to come back. So, you have to appreciate his heart, but man, that's just got to be a tough one to keep rehabbing and trying to come back.
Yeah, I can only imagine just what it's like to have to go through all that over and over and over again. Like, it's just never-ending setbacks.
White Sox. not too much there. Other than Yasiel Puig is still a free agent.
I don't know at this point if they're going to add him or not.
I don't think so, but if the right fielder that they got doesn't
Omar Nazara.
if he doesn't look great coming out the bat, but your team looks good, doesn't it just, at some level itch saying, what if we brought Puig in here? Because if anywhere is going to be a solid fit for this guy, it might be the White Sox. You could probably get him on a 1-year deal and prove what you can do.
I don't know if they're maxed out on money or what. They did have those extensions with, what was it, Aaron Bummer, and they're working on one with Leori Garcia, but it seems to me like they've made it clear that they're done adding.
Yeah, I mean, Leori Garcia is a 1-year, $3.5 million.
Yeah, it's
so
not much.
that's not a. But the Aaron Bummer one was it's a fairly sizable deal. So it's a 5-year, $16 million extension and includes 2 option years that can raise the overall value to almost $30 million. It's the largest extension to a non-closer who has yet to qualify for salary arbitration in Major League Baseball history.
Wow. I did not know that. Interesting.
So they must feel real good about Aaron Bummer.
Yeah, I mean, he's shown some pretty promising stuff. I haven't watched too much of him, but what I have seen of him has been pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, I guess they're kind of saying, hey, in order to continue to succeed or to help build success down the road, we got to take a few risks here. So, I think that's something they feel really good about.
And while it's the largest, blah, 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 it's not like earth-shattering money.
Right.
So if you can show you're locking up your players and signing to them to extensions and they're team friendly, potentially team friendly, I think that's the way to go. If you wait a lot of times on these guys, it comes back to bite you in the ass.
Absolutely.
The Cubs don't have anybody signed to extensions and other than Bodie. And
Hendricks.
Oh, and Hendricks. But you're running into situations where the future is murky because you don't know who you can and can't sign an extension to. You're trying to pencil in bigger money, longer years, and it becomes a lot harder to plan going into the future like that.
Yeah, so I think, you can applaud those moves big time. The Sox have always been very good about that kind of thing, locking up some of their young guys. The only other thing White Sox I have is I know there's a lot of discussion as well regarding their leadoff situation, and you and I have talked about it. So I think we're going to kind of see them try to figure that out very soon. That'll be an interesting one to watch for.
I think they've only played 1 game so far. I think it was today. And Tim Anderson led off.
Yeah, not exactly who I'd go to in the regular season, but just because he doesn't walk that much. He can hit the ball, he just doesn't walk that much.
Oh, I absolutely agree. He doesn't walk at all. So his batting average is like the same as his on-base percentage.
Pretty much.
He didn't walk today, so his batting average is exactly his on-base percentage. So it's you're right. I don't know if Tim Anderson is the guy that I would go to. I could see it if they don't have a guy and they're going to platoon and he's riding a hot streak, like where he started the season batting 4 or whatever. All right, I could see that temporarily. But I don't see him as the long-term solution. It's not a knock on him because I think he's he's shown to be a very good hitter. He might be better served down a little further on the batting order.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
So yeah, I don't really have much else baseball. It's just nice to see baseball in effect in sign of spring, baseball being played, getting back into the swing of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. I guess we move on to Bears here. So the Bears made some big cuts, not unsurprising cuts, but they moved on from Prince Amukamara and Taylor Gabriel. So they've cut both guys. They both had some sizable contracts. So Gabriel was signed to a 4-year, $26 million contract, and Prince Amukamara was on a 3-year, $27 million contract. So the Bears created almost $15 million in cap space just by moving these two guys. Not bad moves. I think they were kind of things that we all expected.
Yeah, I mean, Amukamara struggled last year, and Taylor Gabriel had some injury issues and inconsistencies when he did play. I really liked him on the 2018 team, but last year with the injuries, with the inconsistent play, with the money he was making, and the Bears are trying to clear some cap space right now. I think it's one of those scenarios where you can go out and you can get somebody else who you might be able to trust a little more down the road, whether it's draft or free agency or whatever. So Taylor Gabriel and Prince Amukamara are guys that, they did some good things and then they started to struggle, and then you realize that they're very replaceable.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say that they can't bring Prince Amukamara back at a lower salary. But I think it's the kind of the classy move because he's a veteran to give him the opportunity to go seek more money. But it's the right move. He got burned a lot last year.
Yes, he did.
Do I think the tank is empty for him? No. But if you're a team that really has struggled on offense but has an elite defense, he's not the guy that you're looking for. And I think that there's better options for the Bears. So Taylor Gabriel, while you would love to have a healthy Taylor Gabriel, I don't think you're ever going to get that anymore. I think that's between the concussions and other injuries. The Bears need to improve at the wide receiver position. And to do so, you have to move on from his roster spot and the money he's making.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. They're clearing up all that money just so they could get Derek Carr, who's coming to the Bears because he posted a photo of Khalil Mack and himself.
Oh, my God. It drives me crazy. Why do you want Derek Carr? Who cares what he wants to do? Do you want Derek Carr?
Now with that money, no.
Now
the money he's making.
I don't want him at all. Like, if you said you could just swap out his contract with Mitch Trubisky's, I don't want Derek Carr. He hasn't done anything. He had 1 year where it was really good. He hasn't done anything in his career to make me go, yeah, that's the guy. I want him. Because didn't do much under John Gruden. Suddenly he's going to do something awesome with Matt Nagy? I don't think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't put my money on it necessarily.
I'm just sort of looking here at the Bears, their salary cap here. So I'm putting the big one. This is a big matzo ball out here. If you cut Leonard Floyd, which with the money he's making, I feel like you could put that towards somebody that's going to be better than he is. You move on. Kyle Long's retiring, so you move on from him. Move on from Trey Burton. I feel like you can move on from Bobby Massey. I don't know if they do. You've already moved on from Taylor Gabriel and Prince Amukamara. Adam Shaheen, you move on from. And that leaves you currently with $38 million in salary cap space.
Yeah, they'll have room to work with.
Yep. So that makes it a whole heck of a lot easier to make some moves. And I don't think they need to make a ton of moves. I really don't. I think they need to draft smart and put in some key free agents. I think they need a pass rusher, but do I think they should go out and sign the top tier guy? I think they need to bring in some guys who have good pedigrees that just haven't put it together, and because that's what Leonard Floyd is. Why not bring in a guy that's going to make a whole heck of a lot less money to do that and maybe get better results?
Someone that actually gets to the quarterback?
Yeah. Is somebody to take advantage of playing opposite of Khalil Mack?
Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be really nice. Just saying.
You know, I think they'll sign. I don't think they signed Danny Trevathan, but I do think that they'll bring back Nick Kwiatkowski, and I don't think that's a killer contract at all.
No, I know other teams are interested in him, but I think they could bring him back.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable contract that doesn't bite in too much to what you're, paying, especially since he's a 1-year starter.
Right.
But yeah, so I know a bunch of people were shocked to see Prince Amukamara gone. He's on the wrong side of 30, and he's never been an elite cover cornerback. You saved a bunch of money by letting him go. Gives him an opportunity early to try to get on with another team. I just think that was the right move. Taylor Gabriel, injuries. So I don't know how anybody's shocked.
No, I mean, most people I've seen who follow the Bears are not shocked. Like you said, I don't know how you really could be with those two being cut. Those are moves that you pretty much knew, even if it's not the person itself, but you knew moves were coming where they were going to try to clear cap space, especially when you don't have a first-round pick. You knew they were going to work hard to clear some space.
Absolutely. I just, you're going to see some tough moves being made. Don't be shocked if Trey Burton is gone, because I think they're going to go after a free agent tight end. They've already signed one who, Demetrius Harris, to a 1-year deal, and it's not a big contract at all, but he's at least played in the Chiefs offense with Matt Nagy for 2 years. So he's got experiences there. I think that's more of a
depth move.
The depth move, because you're gonna. I think you're moving on from Shaheen and Trey Burton, and I think he probably competes with Ben Broniker. I think they'll sign a free agent, like a starter, number one. I think they draft somebody, and then you fight it out with Ben Broniker and Demetrius Harris for that third spot. But he also gives you the flexibility where, if you don't end up drafting somebody high, you draft somebody low. To gives you some freedom to not have to draft somebody early.
Right.
So Bears, I think if they play their cards right, they could be back in the playoffs this year. It's just, you've really got to play this smart. You've got 2 high second-round picks, no first-round pick. You got to hit on both those guys.
Oh, no question.
And, the good thing is other than first rounders, I think you've seen some good hits, by Ryan Pace. So maybe not have the pressure of a top 10, top 12 first round pick, gives you some looseness to be able to do your magic and pick two big winners in the second round.
And no, they're not going to trade Khalil Mack for picks. That's not happening.
They're not trading Khalil Mack. Sorry. That's not happening.
Do you think they trade down? I know I've seen some people suggest that they trade down.
I don't think they're making any moves until they see what's happening on the draft board. Like if they trade down, it's gonna be closer to the end of the first round when they see kind of what's off the board, what's on the board, because I think they're more likely to trade up than down, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's fair.
If they see somebody at the end of the first round and they're like, man, I really want that guy. The cool part about trading back into the first round is you get that 5th year option instead of a 4th year. And I know a lot of people like to do that with quarterbacks, but I think with any position player, if you can have them for that 5th year, even if you're paying a lot of money for it, to guarantee that you have them for that 5th year if you want it. So I think they might try to package some picks going back into the first if they see somebody they want. But you're not going to just trade. I know a lot of people will say, well, the Bears should just trade down and have more picks. They need some impact players, and you're more likely to get an impact player with a second rounder than trading down to a later second round and picking up a 3rd or a 5th or whatever. I think you sort of stay put unless you want to move up a couple spots, a couple down a couple of spots, but you stay in the general vicinity you're in, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think that's where you're going to maximize. And I don't think you're going to make any moves until actual draft day when you're seeing how that board moves. Because
yeah, I agree. Definitely.
If you see, here's what happens is you put your big board up there where you have all the players and you rank them regardless of position. This is our number 1 guy. This is our 52nd ranked guy. And then you have them ranked by position. And then you go through mocks where people are different scenarios of what other teams are doing. So you can kind of have all types of scenarios of what would happen. Worst case scenario. What if we think in our draft spot, we're going to have our pick of this defensive end, this tight end, and this wide receiver, and this guard. And those are the ones we're identifying. One of those 4 guys, we really like them. And suddenly those 4 are off the boards. And, you want to be prepared for that, because when you see teams draft bad there's always an element of panic even from having no pressure. Like there's online draft boards where a computer system will draft for you and you just draft for your team. And if you have guys get drafted in wonky spots, somebody drafted somebody really high, or a guy fell and then a bunch of people traded up to go after him or whatever. You sort of panic if it doesn't go anywhere like you expect the draft to go, and you start scrambling. You're like, well, I'm not prepared. I'm not as prepared for this group of guys as I was for this group of guys, because I didn't think they would be in that bracket of where we picked. And you sort of panic, like, I wasn't ready for this. So that's, smart GMs have this all plotted out, and they've gone through mock drafts and they're prepared for this. And, as you get closer to that pick, that's when you start making the moves. Like, all right, you don't actively go shopping your pick to move down to pick up other picks, because that's where you minimize your value. You sort of have to let somebody come to you. like I'm looking for this guy that in a spot. I want to take your pick. That's when you can be like, well, you want this. What are you going to give me? I think you maximize your return value in that situation.
Yeah, no, those are all good points.
But the combine's coming up quickly. When is
Very soon, yeah.
NFL Combine it started today. What do you know?
Look at that.
It's
I knew it was like this week at some time.
yeah, so it's it used to be just a couple of days, but man, it goes today until Monday, March 2nd.
Yeah, that's a long time.
So you're right now is when the combine is cool because that's when agents start talking and teams start talking to people and a lot of wheeling and dealing starts happening. And then you start seeing the mock drafts coming out and, some guy who jumps out of a pool in a video or does a backflip and catches 2 balls in the air. And then their value skyrockets. This is a fun time. A lot of cool stuff happens.
Yeah, so we'll see what does happen. I think with some of the combine stuff, the funnest part is watching some of the videos on YouTube or people talking about them, people breaking it down. There's some very smart people that make videos and whatnot, and I always find it very interesting to go and watch some of that stuff.
Oh yeah, and it's fun, and I always recommend it. It's time consuming, but actually find the game footage, not the highlights, because everybody wants to look at highlights, and every player is going to have highlights where they do some cool stuff. But watch the actual game film. You can go on, you can Google and find. You won't find the all 22, but you'll find actual every snap of games, and watch every snap and see how they play. Look for traits. See what they do against. All right, with this pass rusher did awesome against Purdue, but Purdue had their backup offensive tackle in, and he's terrible. But watch him play against this other team who has potential first round offensive tackle, and he got shut down. You just see different things happen. It's a lot of fun, and you really learn about the guys that your team's drafting or potentially could draft. And I'm not like some genius on all this stuff, but when you start watching the film, you start seeing tendencies. Why, like Rosen, the quarterback that was drafted 11th when he was picked a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like I sat there and watched the film. I was like, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? I don't like him. I don't like him coming out. And then he's just sucked, and it makes you sort of feel vindicated. You're like, all right, maybe they were wrong here, and I was right.
You could say you were right, and then you dig yourself into some nice corner pieces of a Chicago pizza.
Right, because I picked well, I get all 4 corner pieces.
There you go.
I don't get the $1 million job or whatever, but I get the 4 corner pieces, which is still all right.
Oh yeah, that's the good stuff.
But then, you have those years where you go, man, Ryan Leaf, I think, is going to be better than Peyton Manning.
That's something you deserve to get kicked in the groin by Buttercup.
And to be fair, I was probably like, what year was that? Peyton Manning.
90-something?
That was 98.
98,
so,
yeah.
I was still a teenager, so I was still dumb and didn't have the internet to go back and watch all the film. And Ryan Leaf had all the potential in the world. He's just a dipshit. Didn't want to accept coaching and just be an asshole, and but
was good if you like puke.
Definitely, if you like puke or people that squander being the number 2 overall pick and end up breaking into houses to steal OxyContins, then yes, boom. Is there any hockey or basketball you want to talk here?
Well, okay, so the deadline is tomorrow. We're recording on Sunday night for the NHL trade deadline. Rumors are swirling around Robin Lehner and Eric Gustafsson about trades. And yeah, I think they should sell off some of these guys. I mean, I don't really know what Robin Lehner is going to be doing here, what good he'll do the rest of the year. I mean, I'm sure you could try to re-sign him, but why not try to flip him for something now?
Is him getting traded does not impact his ability to be re-signed in the offseason if you like him.
Right.
Is he said that he wants to be paid a good wage. So you just have to offer him the contract that he wants.
I will say this though. I think what he wants is a little high, but that's just my opinion.
And that's the case. You offer him what you think he's worth, and he either says yes or he says no, and then you move on. But you're the Blackhawks, and right now you're in last place in the Central Division still.
Yeah,
So,
your chances of the playoffs are gone.
Every time we're talking they're only a few points out of the playoffs. You're still last in your division.
And aren't they like 8 points out, maybe more now with that loss? Either way, I mean they're toast. They're absolute toast. You have to sell at the deadline. And if because Vegas is the rumored team that wants Eric Gustafsson, if they're willing to give you something, you take it.
Yeah, I think it's 7 points out. I don't know if that concludes today's game, but they're a decent number out, and you're running out of real estate here. There's not that many games left to be played. So
No.
if you go on a run, maybe you could eke out that last spot, and
Nah.
that's a big maybe. I mean, that's like an 800-pound maybe. So why not? Why not be the sellers at the deadline? Because you've been the team that's given up way too much at the trade deadline to get somebody. Why not be the team that gets the recipient of the way too much?
And you know what? I think right now you got to get Robin Lehner traded while his value is still high. I don't want to say he's actually bad, but you compare what he did at the beginning of the season to a few of the starts the past month or so, he's had some kind of rough games, and it's not all his fault, but you've seen him give up some pretty bad goals in some recent games. So you don't want to see like his value keep dipping, and then you end up giving him up for nothing. And if he signs elsewhere because he wants too much money, that's not the most ideal situation. So get something for him.
Yeah, Carolina, they're in need of a goalie.
Yes, they are. No, but they got David Ayers now. The Zamboni driver / winning goaltender.
Is that, or is that not such a Maple Leafs thing to do?
To lose to a Zamboni driver in their own organization?
Yes.
Yeesh.
So yeah, right. The Carolina lost both of their goalies and had to turn to a 42-year-old Zamboni driver.
For the Toronto Marlies, their AHL team.
Yeah. So he was sitting in the stands with his wife when Carolina Hurricanes goalie James Reimer went down with an injury. The on-call emergency netminder in Toronto, Ayers left his seat and got half-dressed in his gear on the off chance something might happen to Carolina's second option. Midway through the second option, Ayers noticed his cell phone starting to blow up. What he didn't realize that the backup goalie had been hurt in a scary collision with Maple Leafs forward Kyle Clifford and was down on the ice. So you had a 42-year-old guy who was watching. You literally had a fan playing goalie for you. So it seems like a match made in heaven for the Blackhawks and the Carolina team because they desperate need of a goalie, and you're in desperate need of anything to help you get better in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the perfect storm because I don't really know how many other selling teams in the NHL are going to be selling a goaltender. Speaking of selling teams, the Wings have already been eliminated from the playoffs.
I heard they were so bad that they got eliminated from the playoffs next year too.
Yeah, you're probably right.
That team is puke.
I never thought I'd see the Detroit Red Wings end up at that level.
They're bad.
They're really bad. They're one of the worst teams I think I've seen in a while. This is the team that made the playoffs every year, won many Stanley Cups in my lifetime, and were basically the St. Louis Cardinals of hockey on steroids. I never dreamed of a day where they'd be this bad.
Yeah, you wait long enough and things come full circle.
Yeah.
I'm just looking quickly. So Mark Lazarus is reporting that the Blackhawks are in talks with Carolina about Robin Lehner, but Carolina considers Chicago's asking price for the goalie far too high. But you know what? When you've got a goaltender who has a good track record and you're making him available to a team that has literally no goaltenders, then maybe you've got to overpay there because they've got you bent over a barrel.
Do you want to go to the Charlotte Checkers and get a goaltender? Or if you want to go on a run, do you want a proven veteran?
That's kind of where the Blackhawks are. And you know what? That's kind of the way the game goes. Is if somebody's got you over a barrel, you gotta pay the piper. If you're if you're in a position where you're like, oh, maybe it'd be nice to get this guy, but I don't need this guy. You can afford to say no, we'll pass on that price. But if you're dying of thirst in the desert and there's somebody selling bottled water for $100 a bottle, you sort of got to pay that and deal.
I just picture you just crawling just through a desert and you have a hallucinate that someone's standing there with a big box of pizza and then they just disappear like they were actually like a cactus, and then someone comes by and says water $500. You just like rip out your gallbladder and offer that instead.
You look up at the guy with the bottles of water. It's John Lackey.
He's got him like on his belt, like a utility belt just of water bottles.
He's got like one of those old duster jackets from the Old West, and he flings it open, and there's just bottles of water hanging there. He's like, not that one. I used that as my travel spittoon.
I got Aquafina. Or Ice Mountain.
This one's here. This is going to cost you. It's the Fuji water.
This is more expensive.
This is what Buttercup drinks.
His cowboy hat has two big like jugs taped to it. It's got like the straw going down so he can sip it.
It's really just empty plastic bottles, but he ladles it out of Buttercup's trough with a big metal ladle.
Oh, we never failed to get a John Lackey vision in our show.
John Lackey, so good. Trade deadline is going to be interesting because if the Blackhawks are not able to pull off any moves, I'm going to be super annoyed.
Especially since they've set themselves up to do so. Like, you're scratching Eric Gustafsson. You made some calls up from Rockford. It seems like they feel like a trade's going to be inevitable, so you got to at least pounce on one of those.
Yeah, I mean, Gustafsson is a guy who's going to be a free agent. So, what's the point of keeping him? His numbers aren't that great this year, but he's super affordable with his cap hit. So I just feel like he's a guy that's primed to be moved, and they held him out of Friday's lineup. So I think they're just all geared up to move him. Who else could you move? Robin Leonard, Eric Gustafson.
I don't think they're going to move him, but I'm fairly confident that they've probably had some sod phone calls.
I'm sure
I think they've at least considered it.
But if you move him, do you get good value, or do you just sort of make cap space?
I think you make cap space there more than anything. And I think Saad is having a very, very good year. And I feel like he's one of those guys where you like to have around even going into next year. Because when you think about it, it's like, okay, yeah, cap space is important. We want to be able to afford guys. It's just kind of a matter of, is it worth freeing up cap space for a guy that's having a very nice year and that you maybe want to have in the future when we're not really sure if there's going to be any big guys on the market we want to sign this offseason? I think they ask themselves questions like that. Because for Saad, you don't want to just trade him because of cap reasons. You want to get something in return there because he's having a nice year. If he was continuing to struggle like he did in 2018, then I think it'd be more tempting to just move him for cap relief. But now that he's actually valuable, you want something in return.
Yeah, and then other than that, you're looking at Slater Cuckoo. You can move him. You can move a Zach Smith, Matthew Highmore.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to move some of those guys and you want to see if you have anything in Rockford that could maybe come up and give you something, now is obviously the time to do it. You have nothing to lose at this point.
Yeah, I mean, those are guys that are just veterans that,
are kind of taking up space.
Yeah, you might make it a little bit of cap relief, but I don't know how much you actually get for those guys. But if nothing else, maybe you could, you could get bottom of the roster churning guys, because those are not long-term pieces for what you're trying to do.
Right.
So I don't expect big splashes. I think you do see two moves. I think Robin Leonard's gone, and I think Eric Gustafson's gone.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And I think, honestly, I think when you look at the return you get for those two guys, you're gonna go, meh. You're not gonna be high-fiving your friends, but you're not gonna be bitching and moaning either. I think it's just gonna be meh.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah, so it's gonna be fun to watch. I do think that they make these moves. And the fact that they're being so quiet so far coming to the deadline, I think that speaks to what the future of Stan Bowman is.
Right.
I think he sort of sees the writing on the wall that he's probably either subtly told or explicitly told, you're not making big splashes. These are the confines of the moves you can make, because you may not be here, and we don't want to bind the next guy up with something you do at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you can't stand pat. You can't do too much. These are the types of moves I think are just the most realistic.
Yeah, because you know what? If you move any of those guys that I mentioned, obviously not Saad, but Smith, Cuckoo, Leonard, Gustafson, those are all guys that are free agents.
Right.
So if they move on at the end of the year, if you move on from Bowman, it doesn't impact the next guy at all, other than whatever compensation you got, you have that. So it's, as long as you're not adding cap space to you, I think they're fine with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
and I don't really have any Bulls because I can't explain that team.
They suck. Kobe White deserves better. That's all I got.
I mean, I guess the only thing I have is I'm reading about the front office situation where they're looking to bring in a new general manager. They're not apparently going to fire Gar Forman. They're just going to make him the head scout. So they're just going to shuffle things around.
It's rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah, it really is. Because John Paxson will still be there and overseeing everything. Gar Forman will still be there. And you're expecting to bring in another guy, and he's going to be just cool with that, coming in with John Paxson being... You're basically walking into a landmine where you are the fall guy.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening, and I don't know why anybody in the world would accept that position.
I sure wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. You know, you're going to have a absolute goofball as a boss in John Paxson.
Jerry Reinsdorf disgusts me, man. My goodness.
Yeah, so does the son. Both of them disgusting. John Paxson is embarrassing. Gar Forman is embarrassing. Jim Boylan is embarrassing.
The national media makes jokes about him. What does that tell you?
Like, honestly, like Big Dave, I don't know how he's able to just talk about this team every night after the games, because it's a tough sled, man. And
not want to just go into full rip mode. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's, Zach LaVine having a good year. Kobe White looks good. But realistically, I mean, Gafford has looked all right, but it just, like, Otto Porter still has this injury. You still have Markkanen. What the hell is he? This is a team that we don't know what the hell they are, how they get better, what they're doing, and they have a joke front office. That's a tough sled to be having to talk about that as your job. I don't know. I wouldn't want that, as my responsibility, because, it's one thing to be a fan because you can just shut it off and be like, you know what, I'm tuning out. I'm taking a break. But when that's your job, that's, you gotta stick with it. And Dave bleeds Bulls red, and this has got to be brutal on him.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly have a lot of trouble if I was in his position. I mean, I don't know. I mean, on this show, we can say whatever we want. It's different. But in a position like him.
Yeah. I mean, we could say whatever we want, and even when especially when it's true, like John Paxson sucks.
You mean good if you like puke?
Yeah. I don't need him. Normally I don't like to say sucks because that's just generic. It's not constructive. It's not descriptive. I really don't know what else to say about John Paxson. I think he's a bad judge of talent. I think he's an ogre. I think he has a god complex. I don't think he makes good hires. He's just generally not good at his job, and he keeps failing up, which is, from an outside perspective, is mind-boggling when you watch a guy screw up his job and get promoted.
That's the Jerry Reinsdorf way.
Yeah, I mean, John Paxson is the Bulls' version of Kenny Williams.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable how this can just keep going. You see the pictures night after night of the crowds.
Yeah.
It's empty. At least on weeknights. It's a little more full on weekends, but that's because they're weekends. But on weeknights, nobody's going to the games. Nobody's going.
My buddy Gary, who's on the show, he went the other night and sat in Zach LaVine's seats.
Was it depressing? Did he say?
I mean, that's got to be awesome sitting in the first row.
Sure. But I just mean the vibe in the crowd.
I don't know. I didn't ask him about that. I'll have to ask him. But It's, even if it's terrible, that's got to be a cool spot to sit in.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I think he was sitting. I think he said he was sitting right in front of Felicio's brother.
Oh, really? That's kind of neat.
Yeah, so I'm like, that's cool. Maybe Boylan will put you in for a couple minutes.
Honestly, just say you're on the team, and Jim Boylan will probably believe you. He'll be like, "Oh, okay."
But yeah, this whole situation of Gar Forman just being moved, and what's happening with Doug Collins, and I'm reading Joe Cowley apparently is describing it as John Paxson slipping to the background, and the new general manager would assume the media duties. So basically, they would just be the face of all the anger, and John Paxson would just be Emperor Palpatine behind the scenes.
Oh, I'm afraid your basketball team will be quite shitty when your team arrives.
Oh, goodness gracious. This whole team just makes me just want to smash my head into the wall.
It's bad. It's really, really bad. You know what they were saying on 670 The Score when I was driving home? I think Danny Mack said this, and he's absolutely right. The Bulls are so irrelevant now where you go around anywhere in the Chicagoland area. When teams are good, people are talking about them, and even when they're not good, teams like the Bears or the Cubs, the Bulls typically are talked about on the streets a lot. Do you hear anybody talking about the Bulls?
Nope.
No.
Unless
No
they're
one
complaining.
couldn't give a crap.
The only thing you'll hear anybody talking about the Bulls is they suck, fire Garpax.
Yeah, and that's all. And you don't even hear much of that anymore because people are just done with it. It's the apathy towards the Bulls is like pre-Jordan era.
And have you ever seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Like bits and pieces.
It's just I feel like Jerry Reinsdorf now must be like the grandpa from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where he's just sitting in a wheelchair and he's just like, and they're like, "Get her with the hammer, Grandpa!" And you just put the hammer in his hand and he drops it because he has no strength. He's half alive and and it's John Paxson going, "Jerry, just sign the checks, Jerry. It's all good. I'll just hire a new general manager. It's all good.
We'll just
Jim
rearrange
Boylan-
the deck chairs."
Jim Boylan's doing good. Just injuries, that's all." It's so cringeworthy. And, you look back in the 70s and 80s, you look at the teams that were important in the league, and it was the Celtics, it was the Lakers, it was the Knicks, and the Knicks have just become absolutely irrelevant. And now the Bulls became prominent with the Jordan era, and they became an important team in the league. And they have absolutely squandered all of that. They won the Mega Millions or the Powerball, and they squandered it all, and now they're broke, living in their Honda Civic.
Yeah.
That's where they're at. This team is irrelevant. In the national spotlight, it means nothing.
No, nobody wants to talk about them. The only national spotlight they got was the All-Star game.
And that was because they were a joke. People chanting to fire Garpax. So, show me the Garfax.
Pretty bad.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Just terrible.
Oh, man. I just want them to go on Dr. Phil and have to explain themselves.
Yeah, really.
Is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, I think I said my piece.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn app, Google Play, whatever. Just hit subscribe. Follow us on social media at ShyFanPat1, at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the podcast. And thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.